Hey folks, thanks for stopping by and welcome back to my YouTube channel Czechoslovak Gun Stories. My name is Kuba and in today's episode we are going to discuss a very hot topic on how the Czechoslovakia armed its main enemy, Nazi Germany. If you watched one of my previous videos, we discussed how the Czechoslovak post-war republic helped to establish the IDF and supported Israel with a large variety of weapons for their struggle for independence. Today, we're gonna have a look at one earlier case when the Czechoslovakia supported another country with weapons. Now, it would look very stupid if Czechoslovakia actually armed not only its own arch-enemy, but also the arch-enemy of Jews, whom they helped after the war, right? So, as you can tell, probably this help was not deliberate, but unwilling. Now, before we start, let's very shortly have a look at the history of the former Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia was established in 1918 and it comprised of many nationalities, including a large German minority. Now, this German minority was not really happy with the establishment of the Czechoslovakia. They felt that they belonged to Germany or Austria, and so from the very beginning there were attempts to gain more liberties, more freedoms, and the Czechoslovakia was aware that it may be a problem in the future. When Hitler came to power in early 1930s, he abused the minority of Germans in the Czechoslovakia by feeding the tensions between them and the Czechoslovak government. Now, the Czechoslovakia was aware that this might be a problem and it can result into, let's say, an armed conflict with Germany. So they started a huge modernization process of its army, and more money were spent every year on the equipment of the army, modernization, about the system of fortresses along the border with Germany, and in the end, that meant that the Czechoslovakia had one of the most modern armies across the world, as well as one of the most modern and up-to-date production of military material. That was very interesting for Hitler. So he started planning the invasion of Czechoslovakia. Now, Czechoslovakia, as I said, was aware of that and they were preparing. They built a system of fortresses along the border with Germany. However, let's have a look at the map, right? You can see the border with the Nazi Germany as it was in pre-1939 period. It was not all that impossible to defend such border. However, during 1930s, it became apparent that not only Germany might be a possible aggressor, but also Hungary. Hungary had also some disputes with Czechoslovakia in terms of some regions that they felt they belonged to them historically, especially the regions in the southern and eastern part of Czechoslovakia. And so they had to be considered a possible aggressor as well. So Czechoslovakia had to start defending the border with Hungary as well. This was still more or less doable. However, when in 1938 Hitler annexed Austria via so-called Anschluss, the border that Czechoslovak army had to defend was even longer. So in this situation, Czechoslovakia had to start looking for some help outside the country because it was apparent we are not able to stop Hitler on our own. One of the possible members of the anti-Hitler coalition with us was obviously Poland. However, there were also some disputes with Poland regarding the area of Těšín. And so instead of joining us against Hitler, Polish decided to take part in tearing up Czechoslovakia and requested that we give up the part of Těšín region and some of other parts of Czechoslovakia instead. So in the end, Czechoslovakia had to consider Poland as a possible enemy as well. So if you have a look at the map now, you can see that major part of the borders of Czechoslovakia with the neighbors had to be defended somehow. And now how you can do that, right? It was completely impossible. So the Czechoslovakia actually started looking for some military assistance outside, and one of the first instances was the Soviet Union. Soviet Union had a treaty with us about the military assistance, etc. However, it was not described completely clearly how it should look like. Also, the Red Army itself was decimated after Stalin's attempts to get rid of the enemy inside. So, yeah, the Red Army was not really in the best condition, certainly not ready for a war with Germany. And also, Stalin had some other targets in the north when he was trying to annex Finland, and also in Far East. So the military help from Soviet Union was deemed impossible. At the same time, Czechoslovaks tried to persuade France and Britain, our two biggest allies, to send us some help. Both Britain and France decided not to help Czechoslovakia because they didn't want to start a large-scale war just because of tiny little country in the middle of Europe. How stupid this decision was turned out later, but they didn't know at that time. So the situation was really critical, but the majority of the Czechoslovak population felt like we should do something. We should defend the country and its independence. So it was decided that the Czechoslovak army will mobilize. The Czechoslovak mobilization in 1938 was interesting from one perspective. It was the fastest large-scale mobilization in human history. Within just 3 days, 1.3 million people were mobilized and armed and were ready to fight against the aggressor. That's really, really fast mobilization, and the way how quickly the mobilization was organized just showed the dedication of the Czechoslovaks to fight for their independence. Unfortunately, with actually all the neighbors being against us except Romania, it turned out that it would be more or less a suicide, because even with the huge amount of soldiers and weapons we had, modern weaponry, the large amount of trucks, which was actually another fact, the Czechoslovak army was highly mobilized army, we were actually not able to defend the whole border with the Nazi Germany. Also, Nazis had a really huge air superiority because their air force was very well equipped and tested in the previous years in Spain, whereas the Czechoslovak air force was not all that modern at the time. Their modernization was slower than expected, so yeah, the situation was very close to suicide actually. The last nail in the coffin of Czechoslovakia was the Munich Agreement. The treaty was signed on September 30, 1938, and it declared that Czechoslovakia must hand over all the regions with more than 50% of German population to the Nazi Germany. That was a major part of our country, including the fortress system along the border with Germany and a lot of industrial centers and companies that were really crucial for the defense of Czechoslovakia and for the economy as well. The Munich Agreement, which we also call Munich Betrayal in the Czech Republic, was signed by Germany, obviously, Italy, which was an ally of Nazi Germany, and Britain and France. Czechoslovakia was protesting against that, obviously, but they were told that if they refused to hand over these regions with the German majority, they will be understood as an aggressor, which is ridiculous, obviously, right? However, we were forced to do that, and this was done, so the Czechoslovakia as such ceased to exist and became a much smaller state in the Central Europe. This crippled country obviously couldn't stand the pressure from Hitler much longer, and in March 1939, Hitler annexed the remainings of the former Czechoslovakia. By that, Czechoslovakia ceased to exist. Also, on top of that, Slovaks decided to go their own way and established what was known as Slovak state, which was actually a puppet state under the wings of Nazi Germany. And from the original Czechoslovakia, only a little small country in the heart of Europe remained. So that's for the history. Now let's have a look at what Hitler found when he actually conquered Czechoslovakia. Normally, when you invade a country, you gain some stuff for free. That's normal. And that applies to military equipment as well. However, in case of the situation in 1939, it was slightly more important for Hitler than it may seem, because you have to realize that in 1939 the German army was not the same as it was like 2-3 years later. There were no Tiger tanks, no Panther tanks, no MG42 machine guns, so Hitler really needed a lot of equipment to continue in his aggression against France, Netherlands, Belgium, Soviet Union, Poland as well. So yeah, he really needed a lot, and he saw Czechoslovakia as an ideal solution to this problem because the firearms manufacturing facilities were here. They were very modern, very up to date, and also the Czechoslovak army was very, very well equipped. And so now let's have a look at what he found here. So all the weapons that Hitler gained by invading Czechoslovakia were equal to a 2-year production of all German manufacturers combined. In particular, he received for free 2,175 field cannons, 469 tanks, 500 anti-aircraft weapons, 43,000 machine guns, 1,090,000 rifles, and 114,000 pistols. On top of that, he got over 1 billion of rounds for the handheld weapons and over 3 million of anti-aircraft rounds. Obviously, this was not all that Hitler gained in Czechoslovakia. There were also trucks, horses, other military equipment, as well as gold and other stuff. So he was able to finance his other war efforts much easier. Just for you to imagine how big this help was to Hitler, so only the military equipment he seized in Czechoslovakia helped him to arm 30 divisions. That's half of then Wehrmacht. And you have to realize one thing. All the rifles and machine guns he gained in the Czechoslovakia were using the same ammo, 7.92 Mauser ammo, and also the rifles were actually the same that Wehrmacht was using at that time. It was a licensed copy of Mauser 98 rifles, so it was very easy for Nazis to just put them into the hands of their soldiers, send them ammo that Czechoslovak arms factories produced. Also, the Czechoslovak machine guns like ZB-26, ZB-30, ZB-37 used the very same ammo, so really it was easy. It was just send it to the front line and let's just use it and that's fine. Also, the tanks, LTVZ-35 and especially LTVZ-38 were very, very modern tanks, at that time very reliable and efficient in combat situations, and Hitler used them for his campaign in France as well as for the very early months of the invasion to Soviet Union. Another problem Hitler had was with artillery. He didn't have sufficient artillery, and Czechoslovakia was known as one of the most modern artillery producer because there was a huge factory in Plzeň, Škoda factory, which produced a high-end, very modern, very accurate and efficient types of artillery, from smallest to bigger ones. So this was also a large help for Hitler. So all in all, we can say that the Czechoslovak weapons actually helped Hitler conquer other countries in Europe as well as the Soviet Russia. All these weapons were given Hitler for free. Czechoslovaks were not doing it deliberately. They were forced to do that by his own allies, actually. And one funny fact about the Munich Agreement, it was only after the Czechoslovaks assassinated Reinhard Heydrich when the France and Britain decided to revoke the signature of Munich Agreement, and by that it became invalid. Czechoslovakia, after all, was one of the victorious states of the World War II. Unfortunately, the cost was way too high. So guys, that's it for today. Another sad story of the Czechoslovak military history and history in general. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, use the comment section below, and until next time.